Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Illinois Chamber of Commerce webinar today. My name is Kirsten Constant, and I am the Business Services Coordinator here at the Illinois Chamber. Today's webinar is titled Detection is Your Superpower. Before we get started, I wanted to let everyone know a couple things. Please go ahead and mute yourselves and hide any webcams if you are not our presenter. If anyone has a question at any time during the presentation, there's a chat box up at the top of the screen. Just feel free to type in any questions in there and we will get them answered. We also wanted to let you know that we are recording this presentation for anyone who may not have been able to attend. Today's presenter is Stel Velavanis, internationally recognized security thought leader. Stel leads a team of cybersecurity's most trusted experts, the CEO and founder of Onshore Security. The Chicago headquartered managed security firm is relied upon by top-tier organizations across a variety of highly regulated and information-sensitive sectors, including financial services, healthcare, government, global construction, and manufacturing. Welcome, Stel. It's great to have you with us today. I'm going to turn everything over to you to get started.
Thanks, Kristen, and thank you everybody for attending. This is something that's very, very core to security these days, but not fully realized. So I'll repeat the abstract that we published. Protecting a network against a hacker used to mean that you had to be on your game 100%, but the hacker only needed to be right once to get in. But with detection, the tables are turned. They're on your territory. Detection becomes your advantage, as they have to avoid making any mistakes, and all you have to do is watch and wait. Detection is your superpower. So first question is your network protected? And the truth of the matter is that no matter how mature your cyber defenses are, there are holes. The hacker can find a hole, and they're going to keep trying over and over and over, and they're going to try methods, tactics, angles, partners. This could span over years, and they're going to do it until they succeed. And that's their advantage. They can fail and fail without much concern, just for that one time to finally succeed. When you're off guard or some new vulnerability comes along, like the new Log4j exploit, which is still heavily unpatched, and then suddenly they're in. Now they'll find a way, because the internet is big and there are lots of targets. Frankly, if they want to make you a target, they will get in. There's always systems and processes that can be exploited. The attack vectors are numerous. There's DDoS attacks, social engineering, email phishing, by the way, is still the most used. Malware, supply chain attacks. SolarWinds we're still really the shockwaves from SolarWinds, where the 2-year-long presence of the hackers in SolarWinds source code, broken code, Exchange servers with the Hathian attack, and again that Log4j one giant open attack, malicious users, neglectful users, Trojans where they're watching your keystrokes. There have been recent exploits that come through the form of cookies. Can you believe it? Where now the form filling that you're entering is captured because you have the cookie installed even before you hit submit. I mean, this is just unending. And you can't just protect these with product. You have to go beyond protection. You have to go to detection. And this is because when you employ detection, you are leveraging your one irrevocable advantage over the cyber criminals. The very same advantage that the attacker has when they're attacking, that is only needing to succeed once out of many attempts, now that's in your hands once they're inside. Every step of theirs needs to be perfect because you have detection everywhere. But let's understand this. The reason why hackers can keep attacking and hide is because you don't control the internet. And nobody really controls the internet. There are lots of pieces. There are different services that are central, ARIN for distributing IP addresses, all the root DNS servers, the domain registrars. Those are kind of core components, let alone the switching that occurs at the carrier level and the routing that goes between them. But you'd think, okay, well, that's control, but it's not. There is a reason that it's very open, and that it makes it very, very easy to hide. It's also much too big to police. You certainly can't put in controls as a user other than looking at the traffic that comes to you and maybe interacting with some providers on the net, like a web application firewall or DDoS mitigation service. None of these components really control the internet, and nor do they police it. It's just too big for them to constantly looking for these attackers. The best examples of it are things like the CV MITRE database, whatnot, where we actually are at least capturing information about what's on the internet and some of the tactics known by the attackers, lists of IP addresses that have been known to be command control. But we don't want to put too many restrictions on either, because those restrictions threaten privacy and trade. That's been a hallmark of the internet from day one, and it's a good thing. And we want to keep it that way and somehow magically make it more secure. There are things that can be done on a policy level and law enforcement and whatnot. That's a bigger discussion. But really, the right thing to do on the internet isn't just a lockdown like a China has made on the internet. And by the way, despite all of their efforts, they have cyber criminals in their network too. And this is because there's pirates all around. There's all kinds of pirates that are attacking at will, very few restrictions, for all kinds of different purposes. And despite there's so many good things happening on the internet, it really has attracted this component of, let's say, the worst in society. But there is something that you do control, and that's your network. On your network, you control the servers, the operating systems, any patching processes, the access, encryption, and generally policies you put in place. You control the workloads that you host on your servers or in the cloud, access to them. Maybe you don't control the cloud infrastructure itself, but you have visibility into the controls that they have in place. Although you take on the responsibility, they never fully take on the responsibility themselves, but you do have visibility there. And also you control SaaS services that you use with configurations and authentication. And you don't control the SaaS systems themselves, you have visibility into their controls, and also you have some responsibility there. Most modern ones have group level and role level privileges configurable as well as loggable, and many of them have SASE type controls and logging in place where you can limit the subnets that access the user namespace that you employ, and of course authenticate off your authentication systems and MFA. And you control your users, whether they're in the office, and certainly you should do everything you can to control them even when they're remote, all doable with tools and process. And you can't make them adhere to policies all the time, but you can enforce a great deal even when they're remotely, like I'm mentioning, and certainly be able to capture a lot of the activity. And finally, you control this whole hybrid network itself, the switches, the routers, the Wi-Fi access points, virtual switches, VPN tunnels, user VPN, segmentation, geofencing, DNS, DHCP, email, all the points of ingress, egress, and lateral. You do control these on your network. And you can put protections in place on all these systems: firewalls, email gateways, segmentation, access control, multi-factor authentication, data loss prevention systems, IDS systems, content filtering, endpoint protection, CASB, and every control that you have in your hybrid network. Those are all places to stop an attacker. This is the territory where you have control, and they will still get in. And they'll still get in because all they have to do is keep trying. They keep trying as long as they don't get caught. So let's go to detection. Detection is your superpower. We need to catch the criminals, not just to block them. What we need is detection. And all those points now, every single point of your network is a detector, a tripwire, let's call it, that if monitored correctly and matched or correlated, as we call it, with other activity, we can catch that bad actor fast. And all those protection systems are also detection systems. It's a firewall, endpoint protection, web filtering, microsegmentation control. All these are detection systems. Even though they're also in protection, blocking things, they're also a detection system. Even telling what got blocked is highly valuable. So you see what attackers are after, what tactics they're using, what vulnerabilities they think you have. This is very powerful data. Your protection system shouldn't just be sitting there and doing its job and be ignored. It is a detection system too. It's catching things, and everything that it's doing is valuable information for you to understand and stop an attacker early in his tracks. But let me tell you a story here, okay? The story is an attacker, a cyber criminal, or maybe they work for a government. Maybe they're some kind of corporate espionage. Either way, they want to gain access to your network, to your systems, whether they're in these data that they're trying to get or that is valuable is in your office or on a cloud hosting provider or maybe even a SaaS application like QuickBooks Online or Salesforce. But they want to get into these systems because the information there can make them money or give them access to vendors and clients. Regardless, you are responsible for your data. So what does the attacker do? The attacker scans your network, and maybe they pick up from a spray of scans that they had bots perform. There are some very, very large, in the tens of thousands of size botnets. There's good people always trying to knock them down, but there's more and more botnets all the time. They use them for scans, or hell, sometimes just look up a Shodan scan, which scans all the different devices on the internet and gives you a database, an indexable database you could search from. And those get utilized to scan your network. Their IP addresses are often obscured. They bounce through some ramp-up points from pwn servers or from VPNs, whatnot. And they're going to keep looking. You might be seeing some of the scans, you might be getting some ideas going on if you're doing detection, but if you're not, they just keep going until they find an exploit. Maybe they find a set of ports opened by printers that when installed were auto-configured with wide network access, including inadvertently getting around firewall rules and the subnets that are firewalled. This real use case that I'm referring to. I'm happy to talk about details about all the interesting stuff that's gone on so people can know that the danger is real. But maybe they ran a set of stolen passwords. That's a more kind of understandable attack. Against a mail account, or somebody reused a password for a mail account and it was found elsewhere and tried against them and succeeded. Or maybe a SaaS service that is used to inject malware and give you a backdoor. Email is a vector of attack to this day. I mean, it has the biggest attack surface with lots of users, all accepting connections. So that's the kind of thing that they're going to look to exploit. They find exploit and they get in. So one way or another, and they're in, and they need time to work. Because right away, they see what's around, and they want to find the jewels, or they want to find ways to entrench themselves, and need time to work. But now our internal protections do slow them down. There's tripwires all over. They look for ways to disable anti-malware. That's an early thing if they're working at the host level. But they use existing software because new software is a tripwire, meaning like if they install software or something hasn't been used before on that. So they'll live off the land, as they call it, by finding software that exists there that's going to be already allowed. And they probe other devices on the local subnet, hoping their network tripwires only cover the core network. So they're moving closely around them instead of over across network segments. In the cloud hosted systems, they scan for known vulnerabilities. The large majority of attackers exploit known vulnerabilities, and the cloud providers are full of them. Would love to provide resources for that if you want to know more about how cloud providers are vulnerable. And then ultimately, they do find a payload. Maybe it's a database with high privileges for compromised credentials or user data, PII data, client data, trade secrets. It's all there. Now it's time to pick it up and ship it off to some online storage. Now, but it's not so fast because our cyber defenders are watching. They've been watching, and that open printer port, they might have been an oversight, something that would eventually have been cleaned up. But even now, that access was logged, and even better, triggered an alert for inbound traffic not matching a public service rule. Those scans across the subnets, even when they fail, are logged and trigger alerts. So they scanned, Scan got blocked. Great. Hey, we're happy. No, we're not. We're watching that activity. Somebody's trying to do scans. Even though we blocked them, we better check it out. Let's catch that criminal early in his tracks before they get too far. Elevated privileges on a workstation. Bam. Uncommon destinations or an imbalance of producer-consumer ratio, meaning looks like data is being sent out. Bam. Failed authentication attempts. Data patterns matching account numbers. Servers being accessed from unknown sources. All of these are a tripwire. The attack is stopped. The hole is plugged. The alarm goes off. The defenders now know where to look and what to fix. In the immediate sense, get rid of the hackers, look for their activity, and in the long term, to try to keep that hole plugged, find a way, whatever reason the access was given, to do it in a more controlled way, in a way that's going to be harder for the attacker next time. So this is your advantage. Attackers know all of this, and they're very careful not to get caught. The longer they can be in, the longer they can harvest valuable data and entrench themselves. The average dwell time has come down in recent years to about 100 days. That's the average. Used to be 200 plus. 100 days. Remember, SolarWinds was 2 years during SolarWinds. The attackers who had infiltrated, those attackers who infiltrated SolarWinds, they got into several government agencies through SolarWinds. They were over a year in some government agencies, for instance. They got into cybersecurity providers. In fact, ultimately, that is kind of how they got caught. Even ransomware attackers who are looking for a quick buck, they can't act too fast either, because they have to make sure they're on enough systems internally and on backups, before they want to detonate their encryption. Otherwise, they won't have big enough of impact and can't extort. This could take weeks. This could take even longer. And the main reason that they're found faster than other attacks is because they're found the hard way by detonating their payload. In fact, that means once they're entrenched, boom, they go detonate. Somebody who's not looking for that quick buck, they're going to stay in and work longer and slower to get what they can. So now let's make this your superpower, because they need that time to do their work. They're at a disadvantage. They can't get caught. They're counting on weaknesses so they can go undetected. They're counting on inside systems to be trusted and less scrutinized, so you can be super. So where are we looking? We're looking everywhere. Everywhere is hard to do, and investment can escalate. But considering that you control all those points on the network, the servers, workstations, routers, switches, firewalls, cameras, phones, they're all your eyes and ears. And the way you configure them and the very same rules you employ for protection also become detection. And this is how it works. The magic comes from logging the activity where those narrow rules apply. On a server, it's things like attempts to log in from an IP address that's normally not logged to, and it got blocked by the host firewall or a microsegmentation agent. This can be determined by profiling your servers during tuning or by whitelisting applications. Only limited ones are allowed. On a network switch, traffic that was generated between a blocked subnet, that would be an alert. On a workstation, memory reads were blocked by anti-malware software. They're blocked, but again, that's an alert. Why was an application trying to do that? In all cases, these protections, they worked, but they did more than that. They generated alerts that represent a trail to follow and find an attacker. Every node, every protection system, every rule or policy, and every user are your source of power, and the tables are turned. But there's another important component, and that's for that superpower detection to really work, you need to be capturing the network data. The network activity as a layer, an independent layer from the computers generating the activity, can be correlated with system data and acted upon. This is initially done with a log collector, but network traffic are such in the form of packets and headers, not a system log. So that network sensors, network IDSs, or network detection and response services, ideally you'd want those in place. Host-based sensors can also complement this large mix of logs coming from authentication systems, EDR, DLP, etc., firewalls. And this log collector feeds into a management system, a SIM, security incident and event manager. That tool gives you alerting, reporting, and analysis. Because attacks can be very sophisticated. And so this other layer of analysis is needed. And it allows for threat hunting, tuning, and anomaly detection. when you're looking at this large set of data to understand the patterns that are going on, you need these powerful tools, big data tools like Elastic's Kibana that Onshore employs. And this helps you make large sets of data manageable and lets the analysts create tripwires that are derivatives of network behavior, catching even the most sophisticated hackers. And this whole kind of service is the service that employs this process is called MDR in the industry, Managed Detection and Response. That means a little bit different things to different people, but ultimately it's the addition of human beings watching and making sense of the fire hose of data that is, the distinction here, with other services that refer to product. Otherwise, it's just a protection system blocking threats but not providing any intelligence. And there's actually more, to it than that. Detection, is not just simply your superpower gets attackers. Along with catching the crooks, you also maintain a large set of data for forensics. That's something that can make a 7-figure difference in liability when you demonstrate what data was or wasn't exfiltrated in an attack. And all the cybersecurity frameworks are calling for it, and government regulations are catching up. The SEC just a few months ago required that data breaches are made public within 4 days. How can you make a breach publicly known? Once you know that is, of course, without knowing what happened, what was attacked, what possibly might be exposed. I mean, it can be a complete black and white difference between what the impact is to your shareholders and the organization internally, of course. But also compliance violations are also detected in the process. Activity on the network is logged and monitored, and so now you can check for things on the network that shouldn't be there, certain kinds of data passing, users trying to access the network that shouldn't be, whatnot. So anyways, with every threat thwarted and compliance checked off, audit data reviewed, violations detected, anomalous behavior investigated, that network becomes tighter and tighter and tougher for the attacker to get in there and go undetected. Let me add the testing component. It's good to briefly mention here. MDR services thrive on data. They need that live data, but it's not only the live data. It's also this not quite static data of network and system configurations. Typically, a vulnerability scan done regularly provides this and can be run on a continuous basis also to provide trending data and aid in vulnerability management. Regardless, it's a valuable set of data that provides context for the analyst to narrow the haystack with. Penetration testing, where a hired hacker is attacked to asked to attempt a break-in, is more of a true test, but more importantly, it's also a data point for further context for the defenders. The pen tester doesn't want to get caught either, certainly not before they find a path in. They have the advantage over the hacker, so their findings are very valuable. So, and I'd also be remiss in not providing some additional clarification. Some of the terms that the industry uses aren't consistent. They change over time and are overlapping. Here we primarily discussed MDR, or Managed Detection and Response. This is a service that employs many tools that comprise a platform utilized by analysts and engineers for detection. The components vary a good bit by provider. Onshore's own Panoptic, meaning all-seeing platform. We also have our Panoptic sensor, which is a device deployed across your network or in the cloud, and the Panoptic SIM, which is the data ingestion point using Elastic in our own private cloud. It gives you that visualization and analysis. Those are the components there for ours. There's a but per client, there's also logging and intrusion detection agents installed on servers and workstations, network access controllers and network traffic integrators, XDR systems, DLP systems, and others. XDR has come into fashion more recently as an elevation of EDR, so that'd be extended detection and response as opposed to endpoint detection and response. That's mainly meant to highlight the ability to correlate that EDR, that endpoint data, with other data sets. Kind of like a SIM does. It doesn't really replace a SIM. It overlaps and can suffice in many environments. It's a little less powerful than a SIM is, and it's very focused on that endpoint data, but can take in other data as opposed to only the endpoint data, whereas a SIM is rich in a wide set of telemetry. If you're integrating with network telemetry, especially, and you're providing tuning for the network telemetry itself coming from routers, switches, whatnot, and firewalls, then that term is called network detection and response. And the way we do it in onshore is we add network detection and response to managed detection and response. So I will recap now. Detection is your superpower. Let's use it. Make every protection system, including your users, also a detection system. Feed that data into one place where it can be analyzed. Put a process in place for ongoing analysis of the data to find the attackers early on and tighten up every day. Work with government and industry to demonstrate high security and compliance. Be ready when you do get attacked and respond quickly. Be informed with data that provides attestation of methods and impact. And be safe. Thank you. Do we have any questions? Any discussion points?
Hey, Stel, we do have a question.
Please.
It is, are there any regulations or compliance requirements regarding detection to be aware of?
There are many different what I call frameworks these days, and people might be familiar with NIST or CMMC, HIPAA, PCI DSS. There are many different, so let's think of framework as a kind of a template that you can use that lets you fill in policy items and controls for how you run your network. So different regulatory bodies will point to different frameworks. Probably the most interesting one these days is CMMC from the Department of Defense. But they don't have to just point to the framework. They usually have to say what their requirement is, on top of that. So, but all of the frameworks, all of them, have very, very clearly highlight log ingestion and general kind of network activity ingestion, all of them. There's clear implication that should be being, let's say, reviewed, even if the term analyze is there. So then the question there is, well, what does that mean? Where does it go to? Most people in the highly regulated spaces like banking, where we work heavily, but let's add in healthcare and let's add in anybody that does Department of Defense work in particular. They would be very remiss in interpreting analysis to not mean ongoing analysis, rather than just occasional. So again, the answer to the question more simply: do regulations require it? The financial space more clearly so, and other spaces less clearly so. But across the board, it's clear there's a good bit of requirement there, and the future is going to be it will be more log collection and full analysis of all of your log data. Be also careful too, because compliance doesn't just come in the form of regulation. Compliance comes in the form of vendor requirements. Vendors or customers will ask you for specific requirements. In some cases, point to a framework or point to a policy set of their own. And what you'll see more and more is insurance will become a big compliance driver. That's already happening for cyber liability insurance, especially with mid-market and up. But you will see this happening very much so in a wider space. Smaller companies, and probably even in general liability insurance policies, watch it really. I'd say even as early as this year, you'll start to be seeing some of that. Last but not least, there is also compliance pressure, coming from like M&A activity and due diligence process on the business side, and also from industries. Probably the most successful compliance pressure has come from the PCI, the payment card industry, with a standard called the DSS standard, and they've been doing it for 20 years now. And I'd say they've actually should be applauded. They've made the biggest impact in protecting people from cyber attacks, than anybody else, to be honest with you. And that's not government. That's the the Payment Card Industry Association that decided we were going to get together and set standards. Hope that helps.
Perfect. Thank you, Stell.
You're welcome, Chris.
We can give people a little bit of time if they are typing any questions in. While we wait for those, I wanted to let everyone know that this presentation did qualify for continuing education credits. Everyone should have received an email from me with the presentation's PowerPoint and our CEU request form. If you did not receive that email, please let me know and I will resend it. Is there anything you wanted to go over, Stell, while we're waiting?
Well, I just want to make sure people know that we're a resource. Our offerings do, even though primarily MDR is what we do, we do have a consulting wing. So if there are organizations that want some input and some direction, we're very happy to provide that. We're not a QSA. We don't do the testing itself. Those are specific organizations that do that, but we do assessments. Vulnerability assessments. We do vulnerability management. So it's all blue team stuff, but it's good for the audience to know in case they're eager to get an idea of what resources make sense for them. We're happy to help you figure that out. I'll give some shout out to the chamber. I have to say, being on the technology council has been really a treat, because the people in the leadership there are very astute, and I think are making some very good calls in their recommendations to the legislature, including on matters of privacy and whatnot, things that very directly integrate with cybersecurity. Happy to be a part of that. So thank you, Chamber, for having a great tech council and putting on great events like this.
You are welcome. Thank you.
Okay.
So I do not see any questions, but if anyone thinks of a question after we end, feel free to send me an email and I will pass the question on to Stell. So thank you to everyone for joining us this afternoon, and thank you, Stell, for the presentation. This concludes our webinar, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.
You're welcome. Thanks, Kristen.